I'm going to get started because we've got, a critical mass and many more will come in. But again, this is Anat Shenker-Osorio, who is an amazing, kind of revered. I mean, basically, you say Anat's name in almost any circles in left politics, and everybody knows her. Everybody respects her. Everybody listens to her. She is sometimes called a messaging guru. She founded ASO Communications. Occasionally in my newsletter, I will post messaging guidance from ASO. She does a every 2-week call. Is that how often? That is legendary and incredible. And if you're very nice to me, I might help you go participate in it. But and also she has a great podcast called Words to Win By. So I thought it would be really nice and fun, but also very helpful in this moment to have Anat on the show, such as it is. Just because I like her, first of all, and I wish I were friends with her, but we don't live in the same town. But also because what Anat does is she teaches people how to talk about things in a way that is helpful to our side and, may I say, damaging to the other side. So that we're talking about things in a way that not only don't hurt us, because sometimes our language can be inadvertently a little self-destructive, like it doesn't help us. She talks to us and does a lot of, her organization does focus groups and a lot of polling to find out what messages work, why they work, and how we can best frame things so that we are bringing more people to our cause, to our fight, off the sidelines, and towards left politics. So let's just start with a general overview and not where do you? I mean, I don't need to ask you where you think we are right now because we're in hell, and I think nobody would argue otherwise. Yes, Anat is brilliant. I know everybody's so happy to see you. Talk to us a little bit about where your head is at in this precise moment in time, which is unlike any moment we have faced before.
Yeah. Well, first of all, just thank you for that, like, all too kind introduction. And I will not fangirl back at you because we'll just waste people's time more. But I just so admire everything that you do, how steadfast you are, what an incredibly reliable voice you are, honestly, Jess, of a place that people can come to, as you say, chop wood and carry water. Courage is contagious, and there is nothing more important than doing the things we want other people to do.
Yeah.
We need to tell people what we want them to do and stop telling them what we don't want them to do. So I'm going to start there. And what I mean by that is if you've ever taken a child to a swimming pool, you know that a decent lifeguard, if they see a child running, they will yell, walk. Because if you yell, don't run at a child, they're going to start running, either out of defiance or because you just yelled, run at them.
Mm.
And so every time we say it was not self-defense, they are not just doing XYZ. This is not about that. This is not going to make us safer. This will not help our election. This does not bring down prices. Essentially, what you're doing is you're engaging in the conversation that it's worth talking about whether or not that was self-defense. And I assume everybody knows what I mean by that. But in case you're confused, I mean the horrific murder of Renee Good. So I realize that's sort of a strange place to start, but we live so completely and thoroughly inside of our opposition's narrative that it can be difficult. It's a bit like the parable of Plato's cave, if anybody remembers that from, some class you probably were trying to wipe out of your memory. But we live constantly in the opposition's narrative. And so when we begin to speak or we begin to write or we begin to post or we begin to whatever, it is natural and it is our default to say what we're against. And what we know is that while we absolutely need to call out the villains and be absolutely clear the origin story behind the pain that we are experiencing, we need to say what we are for. And if you can remember nothing else about what transpires in this conversation, it's say what you're for, say what you're for, say what you're for. And I know that that feels like the most absurd thing to say in this moment. And how could I possibly be saying that? And I want to tell you that I not only like am telling you that, I'm telling you that as a person who has worked in Minnesota since 2017. I'm telling you that as a person who, for the last, I don't know how many days, but it feels like 750 million, have been working directly with the extraordinary people in Minnesota, including the family. And figuring out what to say about this with people who are in an amount of grief and pain that is truly beyond human reckoning, and trying to still find something to say, thanks to them, not to me, about who Renee was and what she represents. I don't know how many of you have seen the statement that Becca Good put out. If you know
Did
what
you
I'm,
help write that statement?
I mean, that's not like a thing to advertise, but yeah, yeah, yes. Um, Only
Wow.
because you're asking me directly.
Can I
Um,
just interject for 1 second? And then I'll let you please keep going. But I read that entire statement as a video the minute it came out and posted it on social media. And it's got like almost 3.5 million views on Instagram. That statement really was so unbelievably effective. So if you had anything to do with it, kudos, mostly kudos to her, because I'm sure it mostly
Kudos
came
to
from,
her.
yeah, no, I get that. But astonishingly strong, beautiful statement that did not wag a finger even one time ever, but just talked about who she was. It was extraordinary. And if you haven't read it, you should seek it out, or I will include a link in the follow up email. But anyway, please keep going. But that's just so wild because as soon as I read that, I thought everybody needs to hear this statement.
Yeah. I mean, it's an extraordinary statement and it really is a credit to her. It's just, I was able to be supportive to kind of put into words the ideas that came from her.
Wow.
That's her, her,
Yeah.
her,
Her.
her and the people around her, her and the
Yeah.
people around her, her and the
Yeah.
people around her. So sorry to be a little disjointed. It's also like every other minute I'm crying.
Yeah.
I also uh, had some practice with this because I work a lot in Australia and I was in Bondi
Oh, that's right.
the day of the massacre. And we belonged to that Jewish community when we lived there. So had some practice helping people write statements after that kind of moment. And it's a part of the job that I don't want.
Yeah.
I don't want this job. I don't want this job. So sorry, I'm going to go back to your question, and I'm usually more linear than this. I'm sorry,
That was
everybody.
unbelievably, honestly, powerful and really helpful. And since we're being all unlinear, the fact that messaging takes place everywhere, even in a statement made by a bereaved spouse right after a killing, is something that I think we all really need to think about. There's never a moment where you can't take the platform you have and use it to shape the narrative for good. And I think that's really powerful. And it was
Yeah,
honest and true and real, and it was exquisite. So anyway,
yeah,
sorry, God,
and that's
yeah.
because that's who Becca is. Like that's just genuine, authentic truth there. So I guess going back to where you started, which is, what is this moment? I think from my vantage point as a person who both has worked in the States for a very long time, but also has worked internationally, including I was lucky enough to get to work on Lula's race against Bolsonaro. I worked on the French election recently to, repudiate Le Pen. I worked, I know folks close to folks in Poland, Slovenia, like just been around the trying to get rid of the authoritarians block in looking at public opinion, but also in crafting messaging, and more than anything, in trying to craft strategic communications and what it is we need to be saying and how it is we need to be saying it. And the major things that I would offer and tell folks to keep in mind is that anytime you're in a moment where you're trying to think, what is it I should say about whatever, is the first question you need to ask yourself is, what do you wish people believe? What do I wish people believed?
Mm.
And once you figure that out, then you say the harder thing. Okay, pretend you did that. What do you need people to do? And this is where, when I work with most organizations anywhere in the world, any kind of sector, whether they work on the environment, whether they work on women's rights, whether they work electorally, this is where folks are like, hamana, hamana, hamana.
Mhm.
Because knowing what it is we're asking people to do is actually really hard.
Yeah.
And so what ends up happening is that we communicate willy nilly. We essentially are like cats with a laser pointer, where we are like, can you believe he just said blah? Can you believe they just did blah? Can you believe this? Can you believe that? And every couple of minutes, we're saying something else, understandably, because it's all so overwhelming and horrifying. And I understand that it comes from an extraordinarily good place. I'm not admonishing that.
Right.
But the issue with it is that the way that it is heard by voters, and this is something that is so hard for, I'm sure, all the folks on this Substack Live to internalize, the majority of US voters are extraordinarily low information,
Yeah.
low attention. And so while that is not you, and it sounds like I'm making this up, most people have very little idea what's going on. They are catching tiny little bits and pieces. And when we are saying, can you believe he just did this? Can you believe he just said that? Can you believe this is going on? And now Venezuela, and now Minnesota, and now Los Angeles, and now this, and now this. And also, did I tell you about egg prices? And also, did I tell you about this? What it sounds like to people is, oh, this is just politics as usual, where Team Blue shit talks Team Red. Sorry, can we swear? I
Yeah, of course.
already did.
Yeah.
And Team Red shit talks Team Blue, and this is
Right.
just how it is. And so, what's extraordinarily important about the messaging is that we can't let the message be the tail that wags the dog. The message is in service of the goal. The goal comes first, and we need to ask ourselves at every instant, again, what do I wish people believed and what do I need them to do?
Hmm.
And so we formulate what we're going to say in answer to that, because oftentimes our messaging, not yours, Jess, but lots of people's, is actually a newsreel. It's a recitation of factual information. It's not a framing. It's not a kind of, this is what I need you to go and do. So, what we need to be doing is saying fewer things and saying them more often. You need
Hmm.
to say fewer things and say them more often. The same way that everything is Make America Great Again.
Yeah.
Everything is a single narrative about how those people, and they do like to change up the cast of characters to keep it interesting, otherwise people will get bored, are the reason for your pain, are the reason for your struggle, are the reason for your strife. Because authoritarianism, not just within the United States, but internationally, has one story. And that story is, would you like to know why your life sucks? It's because of those people.
Right. Yeah.
And so, what we need to do, and we will explicitly say this, we will explicitly start our messaging with things like, there they go again, or once again, or as we already know, or as we see day by day, or as they've done since they got here. Like, first of all, we will make a sort of meta commentary that this is a repeated pattern.
Yeah.
There is nothing new here. And then what we will repeat over and over again is we never, ever, ever call them an administration. We always call them a regime.
Mm-hmm.
And we specifically call them the MAGA regime of the bullies for the billionaires. Sometimes when we're getting wild, we'll throw in there of the billionaires by the bribes for the, of the bullies by the bribes for the billionaires, to echo of the people by the people for the people,
Right.
shall not perish, paraphrasing from Lincoln. So what we say, for example, about Minneapolis is, once again, this MAGA regime of the bullies for the billionaires is destroying our lives. Very simple. They're destroying our lives economically. They're destroying our lives physically. They're destroying our lives all the ways. ICE has now murdered a mother in Minneapolis, Renee Nicole Good, as she was bravely standing witness to their assault on her immigrant neighbors. We must arrest the ICE agents responsible for this murder and remove ICE from our communities before they take even more lives. And similarly, if you would look at the messaging advice we gave on Venezuela, it's once again, this MAGA regime of the bullies for the billionaires is destroying our lives. Like, there's a theme, there's a repeated pattern. The last thing that I will say about this is that messages that are more familiar to people are rated to be more credible and more desirable because of a cognitive bias we hold that's called the illusory truth effect. So basically, the act of a thing sounding familiar makes your brain not have to work as hard to process it.
Mm.
It creates what we call cognitive ease, and it feels true simply because it's familiar. And that's why repetition of the same thing is so important.
Mm. I'm stunned. I'm sorry. I'm just sitting here like,
Sorry.
no, because my brain is thinking so many things at the same time. I mean, I'm thinking of all the ways I want to implement that myself. So say less, repeat the same things more. So always start with some sort of like once again, or here they go again, or like we keep seeing the same pattern. Blame the Trump regime, not the administration, but the regime for ruining our lives. I really like the always tying it back to the billionaires. I think that's really important. The billionaires and the bullies. And never use their framing. And I think this is a really sticky one that I want to return to just in case, first of all, people missed it towards the beginning, but also because I think it's so counterintuitive for us that their framing, you use the very simple example of a child is running at the pool, and instead of saying, don't run, we say, please walk. And I mean, I think any parent knows, I know I learned when I was parenting when my kid was little, you try not to say, don't do this, you say, do this. And so for different reasoning, it even works there. But what if we can try to remember that same tip so that we're not just repeating things like they're not really eating cats and dogs, because then once again, we have resurrected the eating cats and dogs frame. Instead, we're going to say something like, once again, the Trump regime is demonizing hardworking, American citizens or residents to distract us from their failing economy. Um, you know, these are hardworking, I don't know, whatever. You would do it
Can
better, but that's the general idea.
can I it's so the general idea. And on the vilification of Haitian immigrants, that example, let's just lift up that example for a minute.
Yeah.
When the folks who monitor social media actually took a look at it, the way that most voters heard about they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats was not from Donald Trump and was not from JD Vance. It was from all of the social media clapbacks that were done in an earnest desire. Of course, I'm not vilifying the intent, but as we all know, impact and intent are different.
Yeah.
That were done in an earnest effort to use ridicule. And ridicule is important. I want to come back to ridicule if that's okay and if we can.
I'd love to.
Ridicule is important, but were done in an earnest attempt to get folks to be like, can you believe what this dude said? Can you
Yeah.
believe? But instead of actually having that impact of having people see that this is a horrifying thing to say, what they were left with, we could see in research was, well, is that true? Isn't that true? Do they eat the dogs? Don't they eat the dogs?
Mm.
And it's an opportunity. It was a lost opportunity to, what should we have done? This is what I
That was
think.
my next question. So, yes.
Yeah. So on the ridicule side, and ridicule is so essential because the essential sort of idea and posture of the strongman, shout out Ruth Ben-Ghiat, is that he, almost always he, and in our case right now, he is invincible, is unconquerable, is too scary to go up against.
Right.
And so what ridicule does in an authoritarian context is it punctures that idea and it brings him down to size, right? The great and terrible Oz is just a sniveling little man behind a
Right.
curtain operating some sort of machine to make himself seem big and powerful. And so we, again, under the what do you wish people believed and what do you need them to do, we need them to be in constant unrelenting resistance, refusal, and ridicule. And they're not going to if he feels too scary. So ridicule plays that role of being like, this is a sniveling little man and we can take him.
Right.
So the ridicule part would have been this man wants to talk to us about eating habits. This motherfucker is spraying ketchup on the walls. It would have been to do parody videos and things about how, like, this man's going to talk to us about cooking. Like, are you serious? And then on the say what you're for, say what you're for, say what you're for side, it would have been folks from the Haitian community and the Haitian American community doing cooking shows, doing like, oh, you're suddenly interested in our cuisine? Pull up a chair. This is our table. It would have been some sort of large gathering, which we've done a lot of in Minnesota. And I can go back to Minnesota, where we did a hot dish around the world event. For those who don't know what hot dish is, it's very Midwestern. I like to think of it as cancer in a Pyrex dish. They don't like it when I say that, but I'm from Wisconsin, so I'm allowed to say that.
Uh-huh.
But Laotian hot dish, Somali hot dish, Mexican hot dish, basically showing, not telling, how
Yeah.
immigrants are awesome. So that would have been the thing to do in that situation.
And I got to admit, I was one of the, so I did it. I was guilty of it. And like, I understand that, like, we were all just doing the best we could at that moment, but
Absolutely.
we all, I shared a music video of Trump saying, like, I don't know what it was, but anyway, it was the wrong thing to do. And it's so hard because as a rational person with some measure of compassion and empathy, it's so clear how disgusting and repugnant it is that you just feel by amplifying what they're saying, other people will go, that's disgusting and repugnant, and will also be repelled, but it doesn't work that way.
And you have to remember, this is the way I remind myself. I mean, they have a 24/7 writer's room of hate.
Mm,
When they say things, there is a reason that they say them.
hmm.
And so if you are repeating or amplifying what they say, remember that they don't say things accidentally.
Right.
They have a strategy and they have a purpose. And so when you repeat it in an earnest effort to be like, surely when someone else notices this, they will notice that this is repugnant and terrible. The name of the game, going back to the first thing, which is what do you wish people believed and what do you need them to do? If I had said to you back in that moment, what do you wish people believed? I mean, maybe what you would have said to me is, I wish people believed that Haitian immigrants or Haitian Americans are people just like everybody else and that they need compassion and kindness. Or I wish that they believed that Trump is an asshole and that he says incendiary things just in the hopes of getting himself over the finish line and having someone to vilify. Then I would have been like, okay, what do you need them to do? And you would have told me what that is. And we would have constructed messaging from that vantage point,
Yeah.
not from this happens to be what they said. So, I mean, we can offer so many affirmative examples of what to do. The Portland frogs and the
Yeah.
inflatables more broadly are a perfect example of what to do. This is what I like to call the Bonnie Raitt strategy, by which I mean, let's give them something to talk about.
Ah,
A message that nobody hears, by definition, cannot persuade them. And that is the simplest, most obvious thing that I ever say. And yet it is still the thing that I feel like has the least penetration. And so if we're not thinking through what could catch fire, what could catch fire, and I understand that's the reason why the parody videos happened
right.
in the eating the dogs, because that did catch fire and that did get shared. And so it's both and it's both. How do I no longer have a conversation in the inflatables case about crime and a conversation's like, actually, crime is down. We've eliminated crime. It's down 32%. And actually, crime, when you think about it, and sending the National Guard does not abate crime and crime. And did I talk about crime? And did I mention crime? And have I made you think about crime? Have I done it yet?
Right.
Instead, you have to figure out what is the thing that I can actually go get people to look at and notice and repeat.
It's interesting. It's so fascinating because my my I, my first question is just like, why do Republicans not fall into the same trap that we do? Like, how are they sort of inherently so much better at this than we are? Do you have any theories on that?
Oh, I have confirmations on that.
Okay.
Uh so they are in the business of marketing a steaming pile of hellscape shit. They are in the business of selling the utter and complete destruction of humanity
Mm,
at a planetary level. And so when you are selling the decimation of social bonds and the you know, like impoverishment of human beings and the handing everything to billionaires and the like, let's not have a planet to live on.
right.
You've got to wrap that steaming pile of shit in some pretty thick paper.
Mm,
You've got to spend a lot of your time and energy on the marketing because the product is very, very bad.
right.
In contrast, folks on the progressive side and the Democratic side to some extent, and I wish it were to a complete extent, but honestly, it's not always, are selling pro social, pro prosperity, pro freedom, pro justice, pro let's actually have a planet to live upon.
Right.
And so, you know, we for a long time considered paying deliberate attention to messaging to be, and I quote, unseemly. I
Mm,
mean, the number of times that I have like consulted for, in particular, not in the United States, but outside the US, like when I've done workshops and stuff for the Green Party in
mm,
various places, literally focusing on messaging would be unseemly. This is, I realize I'm talking so much and I will stop. I was
yeah.
once
Don't stop.
at an event. It was in the lead up to the 2018 EU election, and I had been asked to go to Brussels to like talk to them about messaging for the center left and left parties there. And I was going through my whole thing, and all I was doing really was best practices and everything that we know
Right.
about voter mobilization and what gets people out to vote, because participation in EU level elections is very low. Like most,
Mm,
the average person living in Spain or Germany or Austria or whatever, they would vote in their own national election. But like, who's going to run the European Commission from their state? Like, they don't care, right?
right.
Who they're
Yeah.
electing the
Sure.
European Parliament.
Yeah.
And so I was just doing that rap. And the number of people, and this happens in lots of places, who told me it would be unseemly to focus in on messaging.
Uh,
We are simply like, our party platform is better and we are
yeah.
doing better things for people and we have
Yeah.
better policies. And so we don't need to do this, selling and packaging. And the irony of the story, which I will end, is that Steve Bannon was across the hall
Mm,
doing a consult for the far right parties. And I said to them, do you think that those parties across the hall are telling him that it is unseemly?
right. Yeah. Yeah, no, really, yeah, that's because and sadly, he's sort of a master of messaging, and I don't understand why, but yeah, he's very good at it. So he's got a grasp on something that is critical for the rest of us to get a grasp on. So let me ask you, this question popped into my head, and I just think it's a good question. We talked a little bit about ridicule, and I'd like to circle back to that because I think ridicule is very important as well. And every once in a while, you'll get somebody who says, we shouldn't go down to their level, and just making fun of Trump is stupid, and it's not going to accomplish anything. It just makes us seem like them. But I actually think it's very, very important to diminish him in every way possible. But I'm curious if you want to talk a little bit more about that. And I'm also curious what your take is on the like orange Mussolini or the mango tit face or like all the nicknames that people have come up I'm very mixed about them. I don't sometimes really dislike them and think they're like counterproductive, and other times, sometimes I hear one that's really funny. Are they productive? Are they not? What kind of mockery works best?
Yeah. I'm not a fan of mocking people, any people, even the most odious people on earth for their physical characteristics.
Got it. Yeah,
I think that that is not necessary, and I think that that's a degradation that, does have us stooping to their level and echoing the other side. So, stuff about height, stuff about weight, stuff about appearance, and I'm going beyond Trump.
sure.
It's about what he does. And so when I was talking, for example, about this man wants to lecture us on eating habits, it wasn't because I'm saying that it wasn't about his weight. It was about like he likes to throw ketchup at the wall. It's about
Mm,
behavior.
yeah,
Um, and so, the orange thing, I guess, where does that fall? I don't know. Like that clearly is some sort of bizarre choice.
yeah,
It's not like I don't think that's his natural pigmentation. Maybe I'm giving him too much the benefit of the doubt. So that's kind of my advice is like the ridicule is about him being a scared, sniveling, useless, little bully.
yeah.
And the reason we use the language of regime of the bullies for the billionaires is because what people know of bullies is that they're all bravado, they're all bullshit. And as soon as you sort of puncture them, they deflate. And so, the bigger question is around so what are examples? I think we all remember that extraordinary sculpture that somebody put up in DC
Yeah.
of Trump with Epstein. I think that's really, really great. I think him being sort of like a sniveling baby, which, I would say is not an appearance thing. I think the thing, making fun of him various ways that he falls asleep all of the time. I think that that's really, really great and useful. And as far as like, this doesn't work or this doesn't this or this doesn't that, I mean, if you know your history and you know your international examples, ridicule was integral, for example, to um, large parts of getting defections and getting sort of greater participation against Hitler. I mean, Bugs Bunny ridiculed him, Charlie Chaplin ridiculed him
Mm,
in ways that are really, really important and memorable. Um, I think the most kind of iconic, famous example, and I'll give one from Brazil as well, is of the Otpor student movement in Serbia and the ways that they ridiculed Milosevic, which you've probably talked about. In Bolsonaro's case, in the sort of anticipation, so they have a 2-round election, they have a runoff. And the polling had predicted that Lula would win in the first round,
right.
and that didn't happen,
Yeah.
and that was very hard, and it was very disappointing, and it was a lot to take. And so going into the second round, which comes shortly thereafter,
Yeah.
there was, having seen what happened here in the United States, talk them through, is he going to cry foul? Is he going to say that it was, fraud, fraud, fraud? And so one of the like incredible organizing groups, they made a giant inflatable Bolsonaro as a baby,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
like as a tantruming toddler.
Yeah,
And then
yeah, yeah.
another thing that happened that I just thought was like, I mean, you want to talk about kind of subliminal messaging in the most incredible way. Um, uh, the kind of major paper of record in Brazil the
Mm,
day after when he started being like fraud, 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 because it was a very close election, they put out a full page spread in their like Sunday magazine about what to do if your toddler is a sore loser and how to
oh,
handle
wow.
sore losers. Never mentioning Bolsonaro. It was
Yeah.
just like how to deal with when your child is tantruming because they think they won, but they actually didn't.
Oh, wow.
And it was like very clear to, people who are engaged enough to be reading the newspaper to be like,
Yeah.
damn, like,
Yeah. That is brilliant. And so these are great examples for us. Um I want to talk to you forever, but I'm realizing I have another thing in about 7 minutes. So before we hop off, Anat, and again, Anat Shenker-Osorio here. You can follow her podcast, Words to Win By, which is amazing. How else can people, first of all, be in touch with you? I'm never sure how broadly I can invite people to the biweekly meetings, but like if people want more of this kind of stuff, where would you recommend they get it? I love this messaging stuff, but I do need to hear it on repeat because I forget things very quickly. And I imagine other people are the same. And then also, you send out a lot of like, hey, this just happened. Here's messaging on this, which is so useful. So if people want to avail themselves of that or other good messaging tools, what do you recommend? And then we're going to wrap it up before I become late.
Yeah, so I think the best way to do that, you would think I would know my own info account. I think our info account at AS. So first of all, asocommunications.com, everything we do is open source. If we work on a messaging project, if we do research, our deal with our clients is that the IP is going to be co-owned so that we can put it out to the world.
Okay.
So there is a lot of messaging guidance there, but not all of it. Some of it is slightly kind of below, farther below the radar. And
Sure.
that you have to get by just look up our website, asocommunications.com, find the info account. I'm 95% certain it's info at asocommunications.com. That will get you to our colleague and ask, say, hey, I was on the Substack Live, or like I listened to Jess, and I want to know how to get the invites to the Freedom Over Fascism briefings, or I want to get more messaging guidance. And that way we will get it to you.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
Yeah. And are there any other messaging people, folks, accounts on social media, anything like that that you personally like to follow, or should people just go and do their own research on
oh,
this?
so many. I mean, so I helped co-found an organization called We Make the Future that is run by two badass women, Tinslin Sims and Anika Fascia. That is the home for what we call the race, class, gender narrative. This is where a lot of the research that we've done. So go check out We Make the Future and We Make the Future Action, the C4. They have a lot of messaging guidance and implementation. I mean, there's a lot of people doing excellent messaging. And of course, all of their handles are flying out of my brain because there's not a lot of sleeping right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's my excuse.
It's
Yeah.
a very good excuse. If you think of any others, you can send them to me and I will send them out. I'm going to
Okay.
probably send this video out on the full email list in about an hour or 2 hours. And I will send the links that I can think of from this conversation, particularly the link to the wonderful statement
Um,
by Rebecca Good's wife that was really exquisite. Any
but Becca
closing?
is the wife. Yes. This is my
Sorry.
close.
Yes.
Yes.
Renee Nicole Good's wife. Yeah.
So the other thing to follow, I can't believe I didn't say this first. Shame on me. Um, is we helped launch a campaign at the end of last year with 22 immigrant rights organizations and growing called Brave of Us. The website, very, very simply, is braveofus.com. Right now, it's in English, Spanish, and Korean. It's going to be in 5 other languages at the very, very least. Um, Basically, what it is, it's a recast and a recalibration out of the 3 toxic narratives we have about immigrants, which is what I like to shorthand as villains, which I don't need to describe to you,
Mm.
victims, which is the ay pobrecitos narrative, which is important and vital and understandable, but at best gets you sympathy, does not get you activation. And the valets narrative, which is my shorthand for doing jobs nobody wants. And
Uh,
so, what Brave of Us is an affirmative immigrants are awesome campaign
yeah.
where we show, not tell, through things like a tattoo contest. People are getting Brave of Us inked through an all immigrant designers show at Fashion Week in New York,
Mm.
through a 24-hour Bangara salsa samba K-pop hip hop vault. As God is my witness, I'm going to make this happen or die trying. Dance party on the mall. We have to be too fabulous for fascism.
Yeah.
There is a messaging guide for Brave of Us that is how to talk about all the immigrant rights things you could possibly ever imagine that is multilingual. So also feel free if you go to the info email to ask for that. Yeah, and Brave of Us also applies to every single one of you, including you most of all, Jess. It is brave of us to tell the truth of what's happening. It's brave of us to come together. It's brave of us to go out and protest. It is brave of us, if we are lawyers, to pursue justice. We have to be creating an identity for ourselves and a team for people to affiliate with so that they know that they are in collective action and that they share an identity in the same way. I'm sorry to give an odious example that that horrible red MAGA hat creates a brand. We need to have a thing that people can look at and instantly recognize and be like, oh, I know what team you're on.
Yeah.
Oh, I know what you believe. Oh, just like the green bandanas that we used for the legalization of abortion
Yeah.
in Argentina and beyond for the Marea Verde. So brave of us. Look at that. That's my
Brave
last
of
thing.
us. And everybody think about what our version of the red hat can be, because we do need that. We haven't come up with it yet. Um, but I'm going to have to call this quits now. Anat, it has been such an incredibly profound delight and honor to talk to you. Love the work you do. Everybody, please, share this conversation. This is something we all really do need to be thinking about. We have to be responsible and careful about the way we speak, so that we can broaden our tent and our coalition and welcome more people in, and fight fascism, which is a fucking horrible thing to have to fight, but we do. So, thank you very much for being here or not. Thank you all for being here. And I will send out a recording tonight. And I'll see you soon. I'll see you soon and not come back soon.
Thank you so much for everything.
Okay. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you. Bye.